Welcome to the Skiffy and Fanty Show.
The battle over language, over naming and experiencing the universe, over what constitutes reality, is always fierce.
I'm Shaun.
I'm Trish.
And today we are joined by a very special guest. That is Andrea Hairston. Welcome, Andrea.
Hi. Great to be here.
This is our second interview, by the way, with you.
Yeah.
Because we Master of Poisons, if I recall correctly.
Master of Poisons. Yep.
Very, very cool. I'm very excited to talk about Mindscape. So for folks that don't know who you are, Andrea Hairston is an African-American science fiction and fantasy playwright, novelist, also professor, which we were learning about earlier. Her novel Redwood and Wildfire won the James Tiptree Jr. Award in 2011. She is the artistic director of Chrysalis Theater and has created original productions with music, dance, and masks for more than a decade. Hairston is also the Louise Wolfe Kahn 1931 Professor of Theater and African American Studies at Smith's College, although emeritus now, if I'm correct.
Right. Yes.
And so, yeah, this is really, really cool.
Today we're here to talk to Andrea about the new edition of Mindscape, which came out on Tuesday. Her first novel, it was originally published in 2006 and won the Carl Brandon Parallax Award and was shortlisted for the Philip K. Dick Award and the James T. Tiptree Award back then. And now it's coming out again for reasons we'll get into later. Before we get into our discussion with Andrea, reminding our listeners to please share your questions and comments with us at skiffyandfanny.com/listener suggestions. If you aren't already here, join us on Twitch for Shaun's Alphabet streams every Friday at 7 p.m. Central to be a part of our interactive live streaming show format. Finally, be sure to review and spread the word about our show. Help support us through our Patreon and be part of our Torture Cinema polls, our live watches, and other special Patreon-only events on Discord.
Yay! So, normally our first question would be, tell us about Mindscape, but I think Trish wants to actually ask about the journey of the book. So I'm going to throw that to Trish first. So Trish, ask your question.
Right. So I was thinking before we get into the plot, as I just mentioned, it was published in 2006, but you started working on it. Your acknowledgments said in 1995, and now Tor is issuing it again. Do you feel like that's partly because the science fiction community is more welcoming of and understanding of Afrofuturism now, so you're hoping the book will get more readers? It did get recognition back then, but you're hoping for more popular support?
Yes. Well, I'm really grateful to Tor. They bought my entire backlist from Aqueduct Press. And so they reissued Redwood and Wildfire, Will Do Magic for Small Change, and now Mindscape. So this is the third one of my books that they have reissued. I started the world for the book in 95. I started the book itself in 99, but I wrote a whole other novel in this world. And then that was sort of like the backstory for Mindscape. I was a professor, guest professor at the Universität Hamburg, and I was teaching a class in Black women playwrights. And I had all of these students. It was a wonderful experience. And I also did a theater with Asylanten, asylum seekers who had come to Germany for asylum from all over the world. So from Central America, from the Sudan, from Sri Lanka. So I had a group of women who our common language was German. Yay! And they assumed, erroneously, that since I was an African American, a few Germans assumed this, that I would understand how to deal with people from Sri Lanka and the Sudan and Guatemala or wherever, because I understood diversity. So it was a very intriguing experience as we all gathered and did theater together, because theater does make communities. So we shared our stories. It was really profound. And I was just bowled over by how much assumptions we all had based on our mindscapes, literally. Like everyone had a world that we created, and we would assume that everyone was in our world, not in their own world. So that was a fascinating thing. It wasn't just the Germans assuming that I would understand diversity because I was African American. It was everybody doing that. So that was like the seed of my like writing this novel. And I also had, I was basically a Southern German person. In other words, my German, the language that I learned was from Bavaria. My dear friends are in Bavaria, and I was in North Germany. So I even had like a Southern German accent because I'm a theater person. So I would say things the way my friends said them, and people would laugh. All of a sudden, people would be laughing. Oh, man, which is Bavarian, what you say, like, hey, lady, you're up in the mountains. But the people from Hamburg didn't actually do that. So I was like, oh my God, what's going on? Aren't all white people white people? And and they weren't. And then people would warn me about the Yugoslavians. And I was like, the Yugoslavians, and I couldn't tell a Yugoslavian from, whoever. They all, again, all the white people, what? And my friends could point out, oh, no, they're Yugoslavian. And then I realized, oh, I can point out the Americans. Like, oh, those are Americans. It didn't matter what, race they were. I could tell, oh, you're American, right? And they thought they were Chinese. I went, well, maybe Chinese American, but American, I'd go, yo, what's up? And they would go, hey, where are you doing? What you doing? People would be amazed that I could tell, just the way I was amazed that they could, say, oh, Yugoslavian or oh, whatever. And I was like, wow. So I was really having, an experiential, I'm outside of my country, I'm outside of my frame. And it made me reflect on what we as human beings do in order to make a world and to survive in infinity. We have like notions that that help us to, deal with how much stuff there is. But the downside of that is, we have lots of assumptions, biases, et cetera. But often we assume that thinking is universal, that we're all thinking the same things when we all think with an accent. We all have a different, way of experiencing and finding meaning and perceiving the world. So that was the ground for Mindscape. And then the second thing that happened was I went to a conference in Hamburg. I taught African and Caribbean theater in the US, and there was a whole conference on, African arts. And, so I was like, oh, wow, this is perfect. So I went to this conference, and one of the talks was about how Africans should just get rid of African languages, like don't speak Yoruba, don't speak Igbo, don't speak whatever. Just get over yourselves and get to a European language, because that's the future. And this is 1995. This probably, hopefully, won't happen now. But in 1995, why are we saving these languages or this stuff? It doesn't matter, because the assumption is English or French or German or Spanish or Italian or whatever, you can say everything you need in one of those languages. So why? And also, there are all these tribes in Nigeria, 200 different peoples, right, or more. So if they all had a common language, they would all be one nation. And wouldn't that be better instead of fighting across, tribal lines? So this stuff was happening, and I was sitting there like, whoa, oh my God. It was very interesting to be, just witnessing this. And then there was great debate over whether you should write your novel or your play or your short story or whatever in English or German or French or in Yoruba or Tiv or whatever, because what kind of audience were you going to have? So this whole debate was just like, you need to check Africanness at the door in order to enter into modernity. So now this is all before Afrofuturism is a term. In the middle, I think 93 or 4 is when the term comes up. But I was an African American. And so, I grew up in the 60s and we already had Black is Beautiful and African is Great. And I had already studied all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what the heck? And there were Africans arguing for getting rid of African languages. And I was like, I listened to them and I was like, wow, okay. So why am I listening to this? Because this is the same crap that I just heard. But the idea that balkanization, to use the European term, was the problem with various nations like, Nigeria, and not other things like colonial history or economic devastation or other things that were going on. It was that, people couldn't, get over their tribal differences. And I was thinking of Pan-Africanism or, in America, the indigenous people who have, just made connections with one another and fortified each other without losing, what it means to be Anishinaabe or Potawatomi or whatever, right? So you can forge something together and maintain your language. So, you can be Navajo or, Cherokee or whatever, and so I was struck by that too. So that added to my desire. This whole notion of checking your indigenous culture at the door to become modern, because you were just, superstitious and weird. So you might as well just speak English or French. So that, then I thought about Black vernacular. African-American language. And lots of people assume that if you speak Black vernacular, you're stupid. This is back then. I don't know what they're assuming now. So I'm hoping not. And rap was really popular at this time. And people were just discouraged by rap as the destruction of the English language. So and I was not feeling this, just to use some African American, I just wasn't feeling it. And people were dissing, like George Bush dissed someone and that made headlines. Oh my God, he said dissed. So all the African American vernacular that became standard English, which is now standard English, my bad. I mean, so much is standard, right? But at the time it was contested. So I decided that I was going to write a character who spoke German, could do African-American vernacular, and her name was Lawanda. Because if you put Lawanda as a name, Lawanda, whatever your name is, and you send out a resume, people will rate you lower than if you put Jane on the very same resume, right? Yeah. You just say Lawanda or...
Absolutely.
So all of that was going on, and I was like, wow, oh my gosh. And so when I was at Clarion, I had already started The World, and I decided, oh no, that book didn't work. But now I know what I'm doing. Now I understand. I put all those elements in, and I figured out what the struggle was, that we had to figure out how all these disparate cultures could work together to save each other. Right? That was going to be what the book was about. And they didn't agree. Right? They did not agree on cosmological fundamental things. But my task was to figure out how I could get them, or some of them, to work with each other in order to make the world they wanted, even with profound differences of perspective, of values, of economics, of all of that. How could I get them to engage with one another? So it came out of all of those things that, I was, dealing with my own, oh my God, you thought all white people were the same. And you didn't even know that you thought that until you got to, it wasn't at the top of my thoughts. It was just an undercurrent that I was shocked that the Yugoslavians weren't just other white people. So I wanted to understand myself, as well as why we thought we had to get rid of African languages. Or a mathematician said to me, in the US, why are we struggling to save indigenous languages? And this all happened at the same time, you know, those things you write in your journal, like this mathematician, you know, whose primary language is numbers. So I get why they thought that, but you know, math is just, and I love math, is just one description of the universe. We need them all. That was my reply. That because you can't know language, you know, the universe is beyond every single language and math and everything. And so just to approach understanding, we need all of it. We really need all of it. And we need the rub as we try to understand each other at the borders or wherever. We need all of that in order to be like viable beings. So that's what I wanted to write about in Mindscape. And that's where it comes from.
Oh, there are 1,000 directions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, golly. So yeah, that tagline that I used earlier about the fierce battle of language, you know, certainly shows. Gosh, I can't get over the stupidity of some of the things people have said to you. Anyone who knows anything about history knows that you don't need a language barrier to fight about stuff. And anyone who knows anything about linguistics knows that having different languages does indeed lead sometimes to thinking different ways about things. Even abstract things like time and you know, things that might be described mathematically, but, you know, time and absolute direction that some people, some cultures and languages have that most certainly Western European does not.
Left and right versus
so you're bringing...
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, to even contemplate, you know, deliberately erasing languages is erasing some of human potential.
Right.
So, gosh, yeah. Wow. So, yeah. So some of those themes were absolutely vital to write about, and I was really impressed by that. But there was a lot else even besides all that going on in the book. So, let's see. To the book itself, my little summary. Well, why don't we actually ask you to quickly summarize the plot, and then we can talk about some more of those elements.
Okay, so an extraterrestrial entity, the barrier, has colonized the Earth. In its terms, we don't understand what's going on, but it's nothing that we can measure or really use our languages to describe, whether they're mathematical, scientific, or linguistic. And it prevents transport, you know, from one zone to the next. It's divided the world into, you know, these multiple zones. One zone is this wilderness, and no one seems to be able to get to that at all. Another zone is New Ouagadougou. Another zone is the gangster zone. And the other zone, oh God, I'm spacing on the New Ouagadougou. Sagan City and the scientist zone. So I had these 4 zones, and each zone, the wilderness is, nobody gets to that, it seems. The scientists control the scientist zone. New Ouagadougou, people think is like, what is that? Nobody understands it, but these are the healers. And they are very, you know, extremely technologically savvy, but no one thinks that. They think they're just sort of weird and throwbacks and savages. And then the gangster zone is a bunch of gangsters who have complete control, and they produce entertainment. Their big thing is that they make like lots of entertainment entertainment and sell things to the other zones. And they are a gun democracy. So in other words, the guns are democracy is a funny word to put with that, but whoever has the gun has the votes or the power or the rule. These zones are disconnected by the barrier, but every so often there are corridors, so people can go from one zone to another. And so there is some amount of exchange between the zones. And there are people, Vermittler, which is a German word, which means, actually it means translator or one who carries things over. But they can go through the barrier anytime they want. And there's some kind of alien human hybrid. And so I center the book on one of those characters, Eleni. And her mentor, Celestina, is the architect of a peace treaty, because the zones, as soon as a corridor opens, they are warring with one another, and it's stupid. So Celestina has spent her life actually trying to make peace. And as the peace treaty is signed, she's assassinated. And her job of, bringing all the world together is left up to Eleni, who is one of her proteges. And so Eleni and a bunch of others, including Lawanda, are trying to figure out how to bring the various zones together, stop the warring. And the barrier is changing and seems to be upset with some of the behavior of people, so they don't quite know what it's going to do. And everyone is hedging their bets, and using their particular cosmology, like what they believe, to try to figure out how to get power over the other zones and over the barrier. And Eleni is actually for the people, right? For all the people in every zone. And so is the group that she gathers, but they don't all agree. Of course not. And also they're interacting in their zone with people who are less than trustworthy, or some people who are misguided. So it's the range, but the book is about how Eleni and her group forge, or if they can forge a peace before the barrier decides, you all are terrible and I'm just going to eat you, which seems possible. Yes. So that's
we keep mentioning Lawanda. Can we talk about my favorite character?
Yes.
So there's so much in this book, and I love it. And there's things that I just have to reread because there's just a lot in there. The one thing I found really fascinating about this book was I listened to an audiobook, which is read by Jasmine Walker, I believe.
Yes.
She's so good. Jasmine. She is really, really good. And
I asked for her. I wanted her. Yes.
A+, because her rendition for Lawanda, it is so distinct. The second it's Lawanda, even before you, if you just skip the little title at the beginning that tells you who's talking, or immediately, because there's so much character in that voice. And part of that is because, of course, Lawanda speaks with the dialect, right? She speaks with an African-American vernacular English, and has so much personality. And I know you talked a little bit about sort of why you wanted to write this, to put this into the book, this issue of language. But I suppose part of what I'm really interested in with Lawanda is sort of as best as you can talk about it, the sort of process for developing the way she talks to us as the reader, that voice, that language she uses, and the way in which you, I think, very effectively kind of constantly remind us in the book that when characters challenge her to say that she doesn't sound intelligent, if you're paying attention to what she says, that is baloney, because she's super smart, very articulate.
Right. Well, I just lost you. I lost the last part of what you said.
I had said that people seem to think that they keep saying that she is not very intelligent, or she sounds not very intelligent, but if you pay attention to what she says, she is remarkably intelligent. She is very articulate. She's just using a very particular language style.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I'm a playwright. So to me, the first thing you do with a character is find their voice, right? And because as a playwright, what you have is language. You don't have interior, so you have to show the interior in what someone is saying. So for me, LaWanda came to me, like that's how characters come. And she started talking. I got pencil. I went, wait, hold up. Don't go so fast, girl. Let me, so, and I had to get her down. And she is writing to her lover, who is part of a military organization. And they're kind of not totally on the same side. It's, a difficult relationship. I won't spoil it. You all will find out about it. But she's writing like, sort of emails to her major, this man. And so she's just reporting from her perspective everything that's happening. And so you get like, almost like a blog, but this is sort of, when I started it in 95, blogs were just beginning. So I just have her find the idiom to express her world. And I'm fluent in that dialect myself. So, if I'm around a bunch of people and we're all together, we can do it. So it was fun writing her. And I kept a list of like wonderful images that would occur to me. Like I'd go through my day and something would occur to me. Oh, that's one for LaWanda. Let me write that down. Or I would remember stuff that someone had said, because she's an ethnic throwback. So this is a group in the future who decide that this is the language we're going to use because the spirit of the language is the spirit of who they are. And there are people at the time who are mad, like, why? Oh my God, ethnic throwbacks, because we should be beyond all that. We should not care about speaking this way or, what good is that? And she is completely into it. Her whole culture supports her. And her sister, who is a scientist who has disappeared into the barrier, I quoted her earlier to you all before we started the podcast, but her sister says things like, the square root of bullshit is bullshit. So these are nerds who have this language. And so they make their own idioms work in the world they're in. And their insights are from, the kind of language that they speak, because language is a way of understanding the world. So it's not just a conduit. The language itself defines how we see the world. The way of seeing, Weltanschauung, as the Germans say, world looking on. So how we look at the world is in our language. So if I say the same thing, the square root of bullshit is bullshit in math, it would not have the same feeling at all. Or, when I tried to translate some of these things into German, I was like, wow, I can't do this. I don't even know, and I would ask my German friends and they would go like, wow, So then sometimes we decided, okay, we can't, even if we understand what we're trying to say. And then they would give me German things, which I also put in the book because German appears in the book. What the farmer doesn't know, he doesn't eat. That's one of, was der Bauer nicht weiß, das frisst nicht. And fressen, Germans have two words for eat. They have fressen and essen. English only has one. So we can only translate it, the farmer doesn't eat, right? There isn't a possibility to say fressen instead of essen, but animals fressen and people essen. So if you have a man who is frist or, fressen, then you're saying something else, about the Bauer, about eating, and you could say what the Bauer doesn't, or what the farmer doesn't know, he doesn't wolf down, but it's not quite, it's not quite the same. So we like dogs wolf their food up. That's as close as we come. But Germans literally just put an F on Essen and you change the kind of eating it is. And they can do that with one word. So the same thing with the square root of bullshit. We tried it literally and it was like, oh, well, okay, no, it doesn't work. And that whole process of me talking with my German friends about how to say things that were peculiar to our cultural landscape in each other's languages was that now we felt richer because we had both idioms. They had mine and I had theirs. And so to me, that's what Lawanda is about, that she has all of that. And she feels like she doesn't know as much about the situation or about some of the politics or how things work, and that she's being set up, and she's correct. So she knows enough to know, what she doesn't know, and she's humble, but she's plain, shoots from the hip, straight spoken, like I see this, I call it. And so I wanted that character there as basically a representative of all of us. So I wanted the audience to come to the book through Lawanda, that she was the one going to all these weird places, meeting all these people, and she was the one we could relate to. And all the other stuff was like, ooh, this is weird. And then, we have freaky Eleni and, strange people over here doing this. And Lawanda was homegirl. Who could be our ambassador. And she's literally the ambassador to one of the zones, but she would be the reader's ambassador, that she would allow people access to the world. And what she's feeling, we're like right with her, like, yeah, girl, what? I don't know what they doing, right? So we would be on her emotional plane with her as she's trying to like make sense of everything, the political machinations, the strange religious stuff, the weird Barry stuff. She was going to be our entry point. So she's like that character in the book.
She's my favorite.
Yeah, I think she's mine too.
Well, I really enjoyed the epistolary sections between Lawanda and the Major, because I love epistolary anyway, and they're great characters. Or we know more about the greatness of the character of Lawanda, but But I also love the pairing of Eleni and Ray, who's an actor who has done some heroic stuff in the past, but is basically just getting by as an actor now. But he loves freaky Elena in a way that very few people do, and I think he's great. There's a quote, I choose the danger, I choose my best self, I choose you, he says to her. Maybe we're not enough, but hey, we showed up. And so, the happy-ish resolution at the end of the book comes about because there's a whole lot of people working together and trying to make a better world. So I wondered if you could just talk about the importance of showing up and trying to work together.
Yeah, well, I didn't want that book where there was, one man who saved the world, because I just no. But I felt like if a group of people could save each other, and that to me seemed realistic. And I'm into hope. So it seemed, which is not the same thing as optimism. I don't think it's an optimistic end, but I do think it's hopeful. So they show up, they give it, they really risk themselves. They let go of things that they were holding on to. They work with each other. So, and I really said, I don't know how this is going to end, because I wasn't sure how it was going to end. But they had to find a way. So I wanted them to rehearse possibilities. And so that's what I was working on. Like, how, these are really hard problems. How do we solve them? So I wanted them to actually try to figure out how they could solve it. And one of the things is you have to show up. You have to risk being wrong. You have to risk not knowing what the heck you're doing. You have to risk the inadequacy of not having a full view, right? No one has that. And then you have to trust. And trust is really hard, especially across difference. And they have reasons to trust each other and reasons not to trust each other. And And so I wanted to work with all of that. And to me, that's a great adventure. So it's fun to try to figure out like, oh, you shouldn't have trusted that one. Oh, yes, but you should have trusted that one and you didn't know. I mean, so all of that is what I was having fun with, because there are certain characters that you're like, oh, wow, I want to surprise you with what they come up with, or what, and have them surprise themselves. Because we often do surprise ourselves. We are often like not who we think we are. So I wanted to get at all of that. And to me, that's like an adventure story. When you show up, you deal with it, and you find that solution that, oh my God, I can do this. Oh, can I? No. Oh, all of that I wanted, because that's dramatic as we work through those things with each other. And I write about groups of people, because I feel like we all make each other smarter, stronger, and better by challenging each other. So that's generally what my books are about, like how people can do that, and how they can fail at that too. Like people try, like, but I often start with something tragic, like Celestina is not the whole book is about her to a degree. And she has made grave errors and done things that were not good. And so I want to deal with that as well. Like with the, like, oh my God, this is tragic, the things I have done. And how do we come back from that? So I start with that, and then try to work through how do we come back from these tragedies, and not just her assassination, but things in her life. So yeah, that's what I was working on.
So I want to ask as well about, since we're talking a little bit about Ray, who's an actor,
Yeah.
I found there was a vibe that came through in the sequences with Ray and the 7 Stories director, as LaWanda refers to him as, which is just makes me happy.
Dunkelbrot. Yes.
The vibe that I kept getting is that they're creating this thing called the Transformers, not to be confused with the other Transformers with giant robots. Right. Not the same thing. Very different. And so much of the sequences, the way that you've written them, made me feel more like we're watching documentary being made, because there's violence and accusations and things kind of going on, and trying to put things on at times that feel like they're dangerous, and there's a thing about Mort at one point. We don't necessarily need to get into it, but like there's the whole thing with Ray's like extended family.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just me misreading the kind of feeling of those sequences, or if that is kind of how you were playing with that entertainment structure.
Sort of, reality TV, fake real life. So, documentary-esque. These are all staged, but we're really doing those things, right? So, like recently, Tom Cruise in his latest Mission Impossible did some of the, most of the stunts, right? So I just wanted to take that idea to an extreme, as well as reality TV, which was really, getting going as I'm writing this, 20 years ago. I don't know where reality TV is now. I don't, but it was a big thing then. And so, people would just watch people do boring crap. I was like, wow, that is really boring. Why would we watch that? Oh, okay, well, I guess. So I didn't understand why people were watching some of the reality TV they were watching. So I thought, no, what if it was entertaining reality TV? So, you just staged real people doing, these incredible, strange or violent things. And then I thought about, the Romans and bread and circus, where you would have, real lions eating real people, even though it was staged. And so There's a long tradition of, in performance of, carnival, where, the real stuff is happening, but it's staged, and it's in, the a heightened atmosphere, but it's actually happening, but it's actually fantasy. So I really wanted to touch into that. So the documentary aspect, I think, is partly that. And one of the things I've studied is carnival theater, carnivals all over the world. And it's startling how incredibly strange people get when they perform in a carnival in real life, right? I mean, so it's a whole, what they then think they can do or not do. So all of those things were in my mind as I was doing, their version of entertainments. And I think they had, snuff takes. So, they actually had people die, and those to me are like, let's have the lions eat the Christians or whatever. We've done this, that's one of the most famous ones, but there are others. That's just one that people might readily know, but there are other instances of actual unfortunate crap happening with an audience watching. And people loved to go to executions. That was something all over the world. People would go and watch people get executed. And I read about it. And then the executions became very theatrical. They were very, staged and presented. So it's like, wow, okay, this is, what is this? So I wanted to think about those things and also present something against some of that stuff. That is, I think, why do we want to watch that? And who is being tortured and treated that way? And what do we get out of it? So all of those things were in my mind.
You're not that far off of reality TV today. People aren't being deliberately murdered, but
I know, but some of the adventure ones where you're thrown naked in a jungle and you have a toothbrush and survive, right? And catch it on camera. Ooh.
Yeah, those weirdly enough to me are the more real ones that they're exploitative, but they feel less bad because people volunteered to go do that.
Right.
But then you get some of the other ones where it's people who have horrible illnesses or in bad situations and that they're just there to make it entertainment.
Entertaining? Right. That.
Yeah.
I think I've watched the survival ones more than I can't watch those other ones. I go, oh, okay, I can't watch this. So.
Yeah.
You and me both. I can't do it. I don't. If you could just spend the money you used to make this show to help them.
Right. Exactly. So.
I'll throw it to you, Trish, because I could ask more questions about this, but I think me going down a rabbit hole of reality TV is not for the show.
Well, let me just say that Ray. I would just say that Ray wants to be, though, a great actor. And so the trouble with, reality or whatever is that they just want this canned crap from him. And this is a typical, this is like the quintessential actor problem. But I could really act if you just give me a chance, So I was able to, and also I could be the hero I have played. Right. That, those, or can I be the hero I have played? So that's, one of his, that's part of his dilemma.
Yeah. Well, speaking of acting and shows, I was thinking of Redwood and Wildfire. A big part of that is what stories get told and who gets to tell them.
Yes.
Yeah, so
one of my themes,
Yeah, definitely. Just thinking about that trilogy of Redwood and Wildfire, Will Do Magic for a Small Change, and Archangels of Funk. I guess some readers might find that those a little more accessible than Mindscape because there are fewer points of view and shifts of points of view, and it's a little closer in time to our time, either historical fiction or near future, without, wild stuff like barriers.
Right.
Yeah, especially for people who haven't read much science fiction, they might find that a little easier to step into those books. Was that a deliberate choice for you, Andrea, to shift your focus a little tighter, sort of, after writing Mindscape?
No, I actually follow the characters. So Redwood and Wildfire came to me. Well, I was trying to write something else, and they were in the something else, and they were like, "No, what are you doing? That's not the story. We're the story. Write about us." So I stopped. I wrote a whole book, and and I kept trying to have them be side characters, or they were over there, or they were the grandparents or whatever. And they were like, "No, we're the ones. This is the story." And then I said, "Well, I don't know enough. I literally wrote this in my journal. I don't know enough to write about you." And then my great aunt, who I dedicate the book Redwood and Wildfire to, she said, "Well, aren't you a professor? Can't you do stuff? What? Don't know how to research? I thought you were like, what is this? You a scholar or what?" So I said, "Okay, all right, go do research. Then come back and write me." So I did the research, and since I had her voice in my head, I could write Redwood and use her voice. And my grandfather, who was a Baptist minister, was doing the same thing. It was like, come on, child, you can do it. So I dedicate the book to the two of them, who are the age of the characters. And I didn't talk to them as much as I would have liked to before they passed away. So I didn't have all the answers to the questions I needed. So I had to go do research, which is what she said, go do that research. So I did a lot of research, but they came to me in a book and said, you need to write our story, and then you can write the rest of the story. So I was like, wow, oh, okay. So I did that. And then the second book came because they are the grandparents to the Cinnamon character. Mm-hmm. But I needed to write a whole book so I would know who they were when they became the old people that are in that book. So it's not quite what was it? It's not like a serial story in which it never ends. I finished the story that I want to tell in each book. So first is their story, like who are they? And the second one is they're her grandparents. Oh my God. And they come to her at a critical moment in her life to Cinnamon. That's We'll Do Magic for Small Change. So, and then Archangels of Funk, Cinnamon is 60, and she is a former computer scientist who also does theater. And she uses her grandparents to train her robots, her artificial intelligence. So she uses their values as the basis of the code that she's writing, as opposed to other values that we have seen in other code. She has them as her source. So she has a 7 generations algorithm that she is come up with, and she uses the wisdom of her grandparents. And her great aunt, which Iris, there was a third old person who came to her when she was a kid. And then that book is again, it's its own story. It's about how, what do you do when you feel like the ancestors have left you all this stuff and you're falling down on them? So that's that story. Mm-hmm. That's what the third one is. So they're all connected, but they are all standalone. So it's more like a series than a series.
Sure.
So, yeah. Because it was fun writing it too, because their voices were, I like the characters tell me what I'm doing.
Right.
So I've listened to them.
It's certainly fun reading them too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know other people. Well, I know other writers. They have different entryways in. Mine is usually an idea and the character. So, what is the question that I'm asking, and then who's going to help me answer the question. And so someone comes and starts helping me and they're, Lawanda. Oh, because I have letters from Lawanda. That's, they were the beginning of that. She's writing to the major about the stuff that's going on. So I get something in someone's voice, and then I know, okay, it's going to be that story. So, yeah. And it's fun. So, because then I start fighting with them. I'm going, like, you can't do that. Yes, I can. And then, they show me why they can do whatever it is that they want me to write. So I have a good time with them.
Fantastic.
Cool.
So I think we got time for one more question before we have to kind of wind down. And so I kind of wanted to ask, you'd mentioned earlier, just very briefly, this idea that I think is really interesting. This is a book that does have violence in it, but its main plot element, its main issue that's being resolved is a diplomatic one. It is by its nature not trying to be violent. And while, diplomats have been in science fiction and we've seen those kinds of characters, I find that they're not that frequent to see that sort of diplomatic plot line in a lot of genre fiction. Often the action narrative is the thing that takes the sort of dominant mode. And so in reading this, you made me think a lot of Karen Lord, actually. You're dealing with a much rougher world than, say, The Best of All Possible Worlds, which is less rough around the edges, and I think deliberate on Lord's part. But you've kind of mentioned a bunch of different times these sort of ideas about the importance of working together, trying to find common cause, figuring out how to talk to people, even when we don't share the same frame of reference, the same culture, the same language, sometimes not even the same beliefs, so that we can have mutual gain, and placing that as the main brunt of the sort of main plot point of at least one of the main plot. There's also the barrier being weird, which is the other one.
Yes.
I guess my rambling way of getting to a question is kind of to get you to talk about kind of the importance of that non-violence sort of plot point in this particular story, why that was so important to you and your sort of exploration of it.
Yeah, right. So I again, remember I said I didn't want like the one man who saves everything. I also didn't want violence to be the solution to conflict, right? So I didn't know how to do that, right? I mean, so I'm like, oh, I don't want this. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's hard, because, it seems like easier to solve it, like just shoot them or, have them die horribly or whatever. And so I also, Vermittler, the German word, could also be translated as diplomat, as translator, as one who negotiates exchange between different parties. It's like a griot, which is the kind of person who can talk many different languages and therefore is one who can resolve conflict. So I felt really, again, that's a central image of the book because, I use the German word because it combines all of those things really nicely if you speak German, but I just make the character do it so that we experience that. So, and all the characters are to a degree from Hitler. They're all translating, they're all trying to, find a way to understand how to reach someone. So even the gangsters, so the 7 stories, and, he's trying to make a movie about Celestina. That's his project that will help the peace. But he's in a gangster world where they want like a lot of violence and weirdness, so, and people are against this project. So each character is in their own way, trying to find a way to the peace, trying to find a way to live up to Celestina's legacy, right? So they all have a connection. All the characters who are living have a connection to her. She was very important in their choices all along as they, really worked to make the treaty that, stopped the war. And the treaty is falling apart, of course. I mean, she's gone, it's falling apart. There are people who didn't want the treaty, and they are perfectly happy to use violence. And so it's very hard to figure out how do you, this is a question, again, for right now. How do you change the world, face your enemy without becoming your enemy, without doing what your enemy does? So that is what I tried to ask all the characters, and they had to come up with their solution or work it out with each other. And some of the solutions don't work. Like, oh, we tried that. Oh, wow, that was really stupid. Why did I do that? But people find allies, and perhaps surprising allies, as they try to, find a solution that doesn't mean they lose who they are, because then that's not a solution, right? Because you want to basically, I believe in survival of the friendliest, but that doesn't mean you're stupid, right? So they're not being your friend. So if you continue this behavior, you will be destroyed. So what else can you do? So that's the stuff that I'm working on in the book. And that's part of I couldn't believe it when I read it again, because I had to edit it for this recent, and I made a few changes. I was really shocked by how some of the stuff that I was talking about is still going on. I thought, oh, well, this will be my God, this is this could be off the headlines. Oh no. And it comes from, the mid to late 90s. And that's the same time that Octavia Butler is doing Parable of the Sower, which we talked about. And so one of the things that's in that book is, Make America Great Again, because Reagan said that, right? And now we're saying it again, this nostalgia for some time when we were all under the boot of somebody, and you could bask in your superiority and feel that your privileges were, part of a meritocracy. So that feeling, which is again with us, I was like, wow. Okay, so that's, interesting thing about age. You realize how things that you think are, are going to go away because you're going to change the world, are something you have to regularly fight. Not that your fight was not important, but that you have to continue it, that it's an ongoing struggle to find peace. So that's one of the reasons I'm very happy that the book is out, because it's that ongoing struggle to find peace. And it helps to have insights from different times about how to do that. So I'm just so thrilled that Tor said, yay, we're going to put out all your backlists.
Yay!
And bring this out. Yeah.
It's very awesome. It is very awesome indeed. Well, for folks that are wondering, right now you can get Mindscape. Every variation of it exists now. Audiobook is out, the physical book, the ebook, right? You can probably get it in cloud art at some point. It's possible. But for folks that may be wondering what's next, what can you tell us that you are working on next?
Okay, so the next book is called The Redemption Center is Closed on Sundays, and it will be out next spring. And it is a murder mystery with a dog who's one of the detectives, and a cleaning lady. Yeah, so I'm and I had, the dog came to me, of course. So I'm like, okay, I got to tell your story. Wow, all right. And then there's a cleaning lady who knows the dog, and it's her story. And it takes place in, a small New England town, and some horrible things are happening. And the dog and the cleaning lady have to figure out how to deal with it, along with a bunch of other people. So, and I wanted it to be fun, adventurous, otherworldly. The dog is, interestingly, not just of this world. So, so the dog has friends and connections that are from another planet or another dimension or something. So that's also part of the mystery. And then there's romance. So there's several romances that are going around. So I had a lot of fun. Again, working on some problems with people. But I have a Saint Berdoodle, which is a Saint Bernard poodle mix. And my next door neighbor had a Saint Berdoodle. And so this is how the story started. And the Saint Berdoodle would make me chase her, right? Instead of I was like, what? She would drop a stick, and I would go to pick up the stick. She would grab it and run away. And then I had to run after her. And then she would drop the stick. I would reach for it, and she would pick it up and run further away. And I was like, oh, okay. So I'm not throwing the stick. You're going to make me chase you for the stick all over your yard, and we could do this for a long time. So I was struck by this behavior. And this dog really, you did what she wanted, pretty much. I was like, okay, I'm not in control of this. You are, okay, now it's time to rub your tummy because you're done with me chasing you for the stick that I don't even want. So I just, and Saint Berdoodles are this one is large, right? So if she stands up, she can put her paws on my shoulder, and she's a little taller than me, right? So it's like, oh my God, okay. She's just hilarious. So I thought, you are my next character. And she gets people to follow her, and she's a search and rescue dog, so it's she's an amazing character. So I had fun doing that. So that's my next book.
Fantastic.
And that sounds great.
Yeah.
And if folks want to find you and your stuff, where would they go?
Well, I'm on Facebook as Andrea Hairston. I'm on Instagram as Dangerous Women Inc. And I'm also on Blue Sky. And I think I'm just Andrea Hairston on Blue Sky. In fact, I don't really know what my tag is because I think it's just Andrea Hairston, but I'll look and see. I'll go right there. And what does it say? It says Andrea Hairston, I hope. Okay, come on. It's trying to load.
It's andreahairston.bsky.social.
Yeah, right. It is Andrea Hairston. Right. So, yeah. Right. Okay.
Easy enough to find.
Yeah. Right. And I'm not on X.
Me either.
So Blue Sky, and I'm hanging on with Facebook and Instagram. So I'm there. Facebook I do a lot on. So I try to post about fun things that are happening, and on Blue Sky. So that's where I am.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Andrea, for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. This has been a delight. I really love the detail that you all and all the hard work you put in, and you all are great, so that the conversation is really always rich. And that happened the last time I talked with you. So this is exciting to, have such care from people who are interviewing you. It's a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're very
we appreciate
welcome.
that. Well, for folks at home, this is the show. So if you read the book and you'd like to let us know what you thought or something of that nature, skiffyandfanty@gmail.com is the best place to do that. Or if you're in our Patreon Discord, you can obviously go to the show discussion channel and you can chat about the episode, and you should read the book, because if you don't, I'll be grumpy. So you can find the Skiffy and Fanty Show basically everywhere except evil places. So if you want to find those, skiffyandfanty.com/skiffythings, and there's links to all of our various stuff there. Again, every Friday, 7 p.m. Central, we're live on Twitch at twitch.tv/alphabetstreams, which is my stream. And then we have a Patreon, patreon.com/skiffyandfanty. If you'd like to support us with $1 US, you are more than welcome to do so.
Well, we would like to thank all of our Patreon supporters. Andrea the Alluring, Cameron the Chthonic, Carolyn the Benevolent, Carrie the Divine, Chris the Candescent, Dan the Transient, Daniel the Cultured, David the Debonair, JC the Jocular, Jeff the Gracious, Joseph the Jovial, Juan the Junctional, KB the Kind, Karen the Kick-Ass.
And then Kat the Kinematic, Matthew the Magnificent, Paul the Pious, Phoebe the Eloquent, Robert the Riveting, Robin the Bold, Ryan the Resilient, Sarah A. the Sensational, Sarah E. the Sublime, and Sarah O. the Rapturous, Scott the Gentleman, Stephen the Strange, Tari the Thorough, Tanya the Triumphant, Trish the Imperturbable, and Victor the Valiant. Whew, it's a lot of names. Well, thank you all very, very much. If you want to find me, SeanDuke.net or SeanDuke.net/SkiffyThings to find all my stuff. I'm here on Twitch Wednesdays and Sundays at 6 p.m. Central.
And you can find me, Trish Matson, on Blue Sky, P.E. Matson at bsky. Whatever it is.
Social.
You can find me on Mastodon, Trish EM at newsy.social, and on my blog, whatsthewordnow.blogspot.com, plus, of course, my reviews on Skiffy and Fanty.
Perfect. All right, as required by the 2025 Skiffy and Fanty bylaws, I must make this happy. And so I am going to say this, which is that I have yet to read Archangels of Funk yet, which is the one of yours I've not read.
You should.
And I'm going to fix that this year. And so that's my happy thing. So
Good news about that book. It's on the short list for the Ursula K. Le Guin Award. And so there are eight wonderful books on that list, and I am one of them. So I'm definitely on.
Well, this just got extra happy. Well, congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And on that note, happy ending and scene.
And as Mindscape frequently says, was für ein Wunder ist das Leben. Forgive my long ago German accent from college German.